China's silent takeover, the war you can't see. 4:16 a.m. The lights die in 3 cities at once. Not flicker, not dim. They vanish like breath in winter. The apartment tower across the street becomes a black slab. Elevators stop mid-shaft. Somewhere below, a car alarm screams, then chokes into silence. Your phone still glows, but the signal icon turns into an empty promise. You hear your own refrigerator click, trying to restart, failing again. The air feels suddenly colder, like the building exhales. Outside, a siren begins, then another, then 10 more, overlapping until the sound becomes one long metallic panic. The hallway emergency lights sputter red. A neighbor's door opens, just a crack, then closes again. No one wants to be first. No one wants to admit it's real. You step to the window and see the intersection below. The traffic signals are dead. Cars inch forward, confused. Then somebody honks. Then somebody rams a bumper. Then the whole street becomes noise. A city doesn't collapse with an explosion anymore. It collapses with a question. Why isn't anything working? Listen closely, because this is the war you can't see. It doesn't arrive with soldiers. It arrives with systems. It arrives through ports, cables, contracts, and codes you never read. And in this instant, you understand the new truth. The old world didn't end with fire. It ends with dependence. The first alerts don't reach you. They reach a windowless room inside a telecom hub. A technician watches dashboards turn red in clusters. Regional routers drop. Traffic reroutes. Then the reroutes fail too. It looks like congestion until it doesn't. The pattern is too clean, too synchronized. Someone isn't breaking the internet. Someone is steering it. In a control center for the electrical grid, operators stare at SCADA screens freezing mid-refresh. The mouse still moves. The systems don't. Substations stop answering pings. Automated protections trip in sequence, like dominoes falling at machine speed. Backup lines try to pick up the load. Then those lines trip too. The operators reach for manual controls, but the protocols require authentication. The authentication server is unreachable. It's a nightmare with paperwork. The trigger is not a bomb. It is a key turning in a lock you didn't know existed. A remote update package, signed and trusted, slides into a network like a handshake. It doesn't explode. It waits. Then it executes. It scrambles routing tables. It corrupts time synchronization. It forces devices to disagree about reality. When machines cannot agree on time, they cannot agree on order. And when order dies, civilization follows. On the news apps still cached on your phone, the last headline is about markets. Then it stops updating. Your group chats fill with guesses. Power outage? Solar flare? Terror attack? Everyone becomes an analyst when the lights go out. Nobody has data. That's the point. The public knows nothing while governments sprint. In a capital city, a secure line rings in an emergency office. A general listens, face locked, as a cyber director says one word that changes everything. Coordinated. Not random, not weather, not accident. Coordinated. That word triggers protocols, backup radios, classified channels, hardened facilities. The state doesn't announce panic. It rehearses it. Across oceans, shipping terminals wake to a different kind of failure. Crane systems refuse commands. Automated gates freeze open or closed. Container trackers show phantom locations, then none at all. A port is not just water and concrete, it is software. And tonight, software becomes a weapon. The silent takeover is not one move, it is a map built over years. The contracts are already signed, the equipment is already installed, the dependencies are already normalized. This is not an invasion, it is a reveal. You try your banking app, it spins, then errors. You try a second bank, same. The ATMs downstairs glow blue, then flash, out of service. Gas stations on the corner are lit by nothing but the moon. Their pumps are locked by payment systems that can't confirm a transaction. In the dark, fuel becomes a rumor. In an hour, people begin to move. They don't run yet. They walk fast, pretending it's still a normal problem. They carry phones like talismans. They head toward places with generators, hospitals, police stations, wealthy buildings. You see the first fights in the parking lot of a convenience store that can't open its doors. The shelves inside are safe only because glass separates hunger from goods. The government releases a statement on radio. It says, temporary disruption and investigation ongoing. It never says attack. Governments fear words because words trigger behavior. Say war and you create one. Say cyber and people imagine a nerd in a hoodie. They don't imagine starvation. They don't imagine the ICU ventilator battery blinking down like a candle. Then the cell towers begin to die, not all at once, in waves. First, overload, as everyone calls everyone. Then backup batteries drain. Maintenance crews can't reach sites because traffic is chaos and dispatch systems are down. Towers are not strongholds. They are thin metal and lithium packs. When those packs empty, the city goes quiet in the worst way. Not peaceful quiet. Isolated quiet. In the quiet, you hear new sounds. Footsteps in stairwells, shouting across balconies. The thud of someone forcing a lobby door. Far away, a helicopter. Then nothing again. Your building becomes a small country with no laws. The breakdown spreads like infection because systems are chained. The water still runs at first. That comforts people. Then the pressure drops. Pumps require power. Treatment plants require chemicals delivered on schedule. Deliveries require logistics. Logistics require data. Data requires networks. The war you can't see is a war against links. By noon, the supermarkets aren't empty because of shortage. They are empty because of fear. People strip shelves in minutes. They don't buy what they need. They buy what they can carry. Canned food, batteries, baby formula, any certainty. When the register systems fail, the store becomes a battlefield of possession. Whoever touches it, owns it, until someone stronger disagrees. A police cruiser crawls past, siren off, conserving fuel. Officers don't want to stop because every stop becomes a crowd. Crowds become demands. Demands become violence. Law enforcement isn't cowardice, it's triage. They cannot arrest a city. At a hospital, the generator runs. It is loud and reassuring until the fuel gauge becomes visible. The staff starts counting hours instead of patients. Elevators are dead. Nurses drag supplies upstairs. Surgeons postpone non-emergency procedures. Then emergencies multiply. The dialysis machines can't run. The refrigerated medicines warm. The neonatal unit becomes a countdown. Somewhere else, a control room for a rail network shows trains stuck between stations. Doors locked. Air systems failing. Hundreds of people trapped in metal tubes underground. They don't know why. They only know the air is getting warmer. Panic rises with carbon dioxide. This is how modern cities kill without weapons. In government bunkers, the discussion changes from restore to respond. That shift is terrifying. Restoration is technical. Response is political. Response means attribution, alliances, retaliation. Response means the invisible war risks turning visible. A meeting begins between allied military leaders on secure systems that still function. Satellites still work. Some hardened lines still work. They share the same question. Is this the opening act? Is the cyber strike a screen for something physical? Because doctrine says you blind the enemy before you move. You cut their communications, then you act. But the genius of silent war is that it doesn't need a second act. If you can shut a city's arteries, you can force concessions without firing. If you can make leaders fear collapse at home, you can shape their decisions abroad. By evening, the first rumors harden into beliefs. People say a foreign power did it. People say the government did it. People say it's a test. People say it's punishment. Information at this moment is poison disguised as clarity. You watch strangers cling to the first story that makes them feel less helpless. Then the ports become the headline, not on your phone, on the emergency radio. A clipped announcer says shipping delays are significant. That word is too small. 90% of global goods move through the sea lanes. Ports are the world's stomach. If you control the stomach, you control the body. Containers sit stacked like silent tombs. Cranes hang motionless over them. Every container is a promise not delivered. Insulin, spare parts, food, fuel additives, microchips, replacement transformers. The modern economy has no warehouses. It has timing. When timing breaks, everything breaks. You don't see any of that from your apartment window. You see only darkness. That is why it works. The battlefield is not a field. It is a diagram. A week earlier, in a different place, a contract is renewed quietly. A state-backed company gets operational authority at a foreign terminal. It is framed as investment, jobs, growth, modernization. The paperwork is thick enough to smother doubt. Nobody calls it conquest when it comes with ribbon cuttings. Now, in the crisis, the leverage appears. A port operator says they can assist with restoration. A telecom supplier says they can stabilize networks. A bank partner says they can provide liquidity. Help arrives wearing a suit. Help arrives with conditions. This is how dependence becomes dominance, not by taking your flag down, by making you ask for tools only one supplier can provide. Phase 2 deepens as small failures synchronize into a national event. The fuel distribution system stutters. Refineries can produce fuel, but pipelines require pumping stations. Pumping stations require power. Power requires grid stability. Grid stability requires control signals. Control signals require networks. The chain snaps at its weakest link, and the whole thing becomes manual. Manual means slow. Slow means scarcity. Lines form at the few stations with generators. People sleep in cars to keep their place. A man sells bottled water at triple price. Somebody smashes his windshield. The crowd cheers, then looks ashamed, then keeps waiting. Morality is a luxury of stable systems. In apartment buildings, the second day is worse than the first. Food spoils, toilets stop flushing. Stairwells smell like sweat and trash. People begin burning furniture in improvised fires outside, not for warmth, but for cooking. Smoke hangs low in the streets like a new weather. You begin to count what you have. Water, 3 bottles and a half. Food, maybe 2 days if you eat small. Light, 1 flashlight. Batteries unknown. Protection, a door, a lock, and hope. You realize how thin your life is. Some people try to leave the city. Highways jam. Traffic lights are dead. Gas runs out. A modern evacuation becomes a parking lot. Families abandon cars and walk with suitcases that drag like anchors. The city doesn't need to trap you. It only needs to remove movement. On the third day, the first organized groups form. Not official. Local. A few men in reflective vests claim they are security. They set up a checkpoint at an intersection. They demand food for passage. They wear radios that may not work, but the authority is visual. People obey because the alternative is conflict. In neighborhoods with community ties, residents share resources. They cook together. They guard together. In neighborhoods without trust, doors get kicked. You hear it at night, a thump, then shouting, then running. No police arrive. The city teaches a lesson fast. Your safety was never the lock. It was the expectation that someone would respond. Now zoom out for a moment, because the larger machine is moving too. In Allied capitals, emergency sessions convene. They speak in acronyms and maps. They discuss Article 5 in hushed tones, because invoking it changes history. They ask whether this qualifies as an armed attack when no missiles fell. Lawyers become as important as generals. Meanwhile, markets outside the blackout zones convulse. Insurance algorithms can't price risk. Shipping futures spike. Companies hoard inventory. Governments release strategic reserves. Every action is a signal, and every signal is read by someone watching. And someone is watching. Not one hacker, not one unit. A state apparatus, patient and layered. The silent takeover isn't a switch flipped overnight. It is an ecosystem of access built over years. Hardware placed in telecom networks, contractors embedded in construction projects, engineers trained on systems they also supply, undersea cables laid with cost savings, cloud services offered to governments, surveillance platforms exported as public safety, payment rails integrated for efficiency. Each step looks reasonable alone. Together, they form a grip. Now, in the blackout, leaders face choices with no good options. Do they accept foreign technicians into critical systems, risking hidden controls? Or do they refuse and let the crisis deepen, risking riots and political collapse? War used to be about forcing a surrender through fire. Now it is about forcing a surrender through necessity. Phase 3 arrives when people stop expecting recovery. The first nights are full of "when power comes back." By day 5, the phrase changes to "if power comes back." That single word shifts behavior. If turns neighbors into competitors. If makes people hide supplies. If makes people consider violence preemptively. You notice how quickly rules rewrite. At first, people apologize when they cut in line. Later, they don't. At first, people share phone chargers. Later, they guard outlets like territory. At first, people laugh nervously. Later, they don't laugh at all. The invisible threat is not radiation here. It is informational collapse. Without networks, you cannot verify anything. You cannot confirm whether aid is coming. You cannot confirm which areas are safe. You cannot confirm whether the next city will go dark tonight. In that vacuum, rumor becomes governance. A voice on a battery radio claims the government has fled. Another voice claims foreign troops are landing. Someone says a neighboring country has blamed yours. Someone says the currency is collapsing. Information becomes a weapon because it directs motion. Motion creates crowds. Crowds create panic. Panic creates policy. In the dark, you also feel the psychological shift. You stop thinking in weeks. You think in hours. You stop planning. You scan. Your brain becomes older, more animal. That is what collapse does. It strips the future from your mind. Outside the city, military convoys move. They guard substations. They secure water plants. They escort fuel deliveries. Soldiers are not there to fight an enemy. They are there to hold the line against entropy. The most humiliating war is the one where your opponent is your own infrastructure failing. Officials announce rationing. The word tastes like history books, but it is present tense now. Rationing means control. Control means curfews. Curfews mean enforcement. Enforcement means confrontation. You see armored vehicles at an intersection and realize the state is preparing to manage its own people. The silent takeover becomes visible in small ways. A foreign-owned terminal resumes partial operations faster than others. A foreign-made telecom node returns first. A foreign-backed bank offers emergency settlement channels. Help? Yes. Leverage? Also yes. The crisis teaches a cruel lesson. Whoever can restore function can demand obedience. In a secure conference room, diplomats weigh a counterstrike in cyberspace. They discuss disabling the other side's financial messaging. They discuss disrupting shipping insurance. They discuss targeting satellite uplinks. Each action risks escalation. Each action risks spilling invisible war into visible suffering elsewhere. The restraint is not moral. It is fear. Because the nightmare scenario is always the same. Cyber blinds. Then missiles speak. Hypersonic trajectories. Naval choke points. Straits and canals. The physical world still exists. And a state that controls ports and supply chains can also reposition ships quietly under commercial cover until it decides not to be commercial anymore. You, meanwhile, are trying to survive a city without trust. You learn basics fast. Water first, then warmth, then security, then information. You fill every container you own when water briefly returns at low pressure. You boil it because you don't trust it. You eat the most perishable food first. You keep your shoes on at night because running barefoot is how you die. You avoid crowds because crowds are where violence happens. You avoid displaying supplies because envy is a predator. You speak calmly even when you're not calm because panic is contagious. You pick one neighbor you trust and coordinate because isolation is weakness. Days pass. Power returns in patches, not full restoration. Islands of light in a sea of dark. Those islands become magnets. People migrate toward them. Camps form. Disease follows. Waste piles. The city begins to smell like summer garbage. even in winter. The government claims progress. It is not lying. It is also not telling the full truth. The truth is that some systems are compromised at architectural levels. Restoration requires replacing equipment that takes months to manufacture. Transformers are not stored in warehouses. They are built to order. Chips are not easily sourced when supply chains are strained. Replacement parts sit in containers that cannot move because ports are jammed. This is the deep cruelty of modern dependence. You can't just turn it back on. You need the world to cooperate. And when the world is watching you bleed, cooperation comes with receipts. In the aftermath phase, the geopolitical picture clarifies, but it does not comfort. Leaders speak about resilience, about decoupling, about sovereignty. But those are long projects. Tonight, people need water. Tonight, people need insulin. Tonight, people need light. The silent war leaves no craters for cameras. It leaves spreadsheets of loss, hospital mortality charts, supply shortages, economic contraction, mental trauma. It leaves a generation that learns the grid is not nature, it is policy. And the moral is simple and brutal. Safety was an illusion held together by electricity and trust. Electricity is fragile. Trust is even more fragile.